If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Good day, everybody. Welcome into the Escape Pod.
Good day. That's becoming your thing now.
A little bit.
Good day.
I like to say it once in a while. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
And we are coming to you from the One Heart campus in mostly beautiful Rapid City, South Dakota. There may be some snowflakes post first day of spring here, but that's okay because we have escaped into the Escape Pod and we're going to share some stories, right? Are they funny or are these serious? Or some of both?
These are not funny, but they're...
Did I throw you for a loop?
You did throw me for a loop because, no, they're not funny. And I think I have four shorter ones for you today. Some of them still have happier endings, but it's like, how on God's earth did that happen? Like they're wild. This is about blackout drunkenness, and which is something I experienced way too much. Who knows what's going to happen later in life? I might have symptoms like my dad and have, be impulsive and have holes in my brain, but we'll see. But some of these
would already be experiencing that by now.
Maybe I quit early enough.
Yeah.
By the time I was 21, I got alcohol poisoning. I don't know how I didn't get alcohol poisoning prior to 21. On my 21st birthday, my friends did me dirty, and it was bad. I probably should have been hospitalized.
Really?
It was really bad. And I literally could not stand up because I had thrown up so much that my stomach muscles were contracted in the fetal position. And so when I was finally able to get up and get back to campus, I was in college, Doc Feisley comes up next to me because I missed a performance.
Wow.
That was bad. And he just looks at me. He said, "You had some fun for your birthday." I said, "I don't know how fun it was." And he's like, "You going to do it again?" I said, "No." He's like, "Okay." That's the last thing he said about it. But I thought it was that was worse because, I didn't have a parent. So that was like that father figure being seriously disappointed in me. And I was disappointed. But I drank so much. I never expected something like that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I didn't drink for 10 years or longer. I just didn't. And it wasn't, I was now married. I had a couple of children. And I think we went to a dinner train or something in Stillwater, Minnesota. And I'm like, yeah, I can have a glass of wine. Lit after one glass because I hadn't had it for so long. And to this day, I am an incredible lightweight now. And I do think it's because it's almost like my body has a natural switch where it just will not let me get to that point again.
Yeah.
So I do not, short of the time I suspect I was roofied, I don't think I could ever get to that point of my own volition.
Yeah.
So these are all about blackout drunks with some really wild stories. I thought we would play around with it, kind of like 3 truths and a lie, but they're all true.
Oh, geez.
You just get to figure out which one's mine.
Okay.
Which won't be hard. It won't be hard.
Okay.
So anyway, what are you escaping today?
I was thinking about that driving into work today, and I don't think I have an escape from anything in particular. My husband, our spring break has started, and my husband gets to be home with the kids today, which should be just fine. They're generally pretty good kids, but I did hear some chores and I thought, maybe I'm escaping chores by going to work.
Right on. You go home and the house is spotless and dinner's on the table.
That were expected to be done.
You get a foot massage and...
Oh, does that ever happen? The answer is no.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a husband who... spoils me in the massage department. So
no, I didn't get that.
Okay.
I got a lot of other things.
Okay.
Not that. No. But yeah, so I think I'm escaping a to-do list at home by being at work, which is fine with me.
Cool.
You?
Well, I almost blew it this morning, so that's what I'm escaping. So I'm going to paint a picture for you. She's already rolling her eyes at me. So got ready for work, and I had physical therapy this morning before work. So I had like 15 minutes or so to kill. So on my phone, and I'm trying to turn down the podcast I was listening to, which shout out to Sinisterhood. That's who I was listening to. And I hit the wrong button. And so I was going doot, doot, doot to turn it down, but I was hitting the power button, and that automatically calls 911.
Oh, shoot.
And so I'm looking at my phone, like going to play a game, and the podcast was just loud because I'd been listening to it through the house. And all of a sudden it's like, dialing emergency. And I'm like, what did I do? So I'm pushing all the buttons to try to shut it off. And then I'm like, are they going to call me back? I can give them the all clear. It must not have connected. I must have hit it soon enough. But I'm like, oh, I didn't realize our phones did that.
Yeah.
Now I know. But that's a great little, quick little
if
thing.
You have
so
to use
PSA.
I feel like I accidentally did that once as well. And I thought I called or that I hit the end button soon enough because I didn't hear any ringing. But by God, in fact, I'm not sure I wasn't here, like in the parking lot. And I think they called back and right away. And I was just like, no, I'm fine, and yeah.
Well, I was listening to, what was I listening to? Oh, I think it was a listener story, probably on Sinisterhood, because I've been listening to Sinisterhood all week, trying to catch up on my episodes. And so one of their listeners wrote in and told about a story on a guy who, it was like probably a Tinder hookup or something. And he gets to the girl's place, and she somehow cuffs him, beats him, like he's bleeding, he's in some serious pain. And, he's in trouble, and she sleeps. Like, so they, whatever happens. But he's tied up, and he is waiting for her. Like, he's trying to get to her phone. And then DoorDash shows up because she clearly was hungry for all the stress of whatever she was doing to this poor guy. And she basically said, if you shout out to the DoorDash people, I'm going to kill you. And this was a Tinder hookup. Like, maybe people should think twice. But anyway, so he finally gets her phone, dials emergency, and then just leaves the phone on because he clearly can't say anything. He's in the bed, tied to the bed, chained next to her, right?
Yeah.
So they do call back, but she answers the phone. Oh, no, false alarm, everything's fine. And I'm like, how's
he get out?
Right. He did get out. He did get help, but could you imagine that?
That's straight out of a Stephen King novel, right? Wasn't that one of
Gerald's
his?
Game? Yep. Yep.
Creepy.
That was.
Okay, so Blackout, drunkenness.
You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a little preview.
Okay.
All right. So imagine having your appendix removed by a surgeon who was blackout drunk when he performed the surgery.
Hard no.
Okay. Or imagine drinking at a pub in a foreign country only to wake up later in the doorway of an unfamiliar building with your tights and underwear pulled down around your ankles.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Or imagine meeting people who know an awful lot of accurate details about you, but you've never seen them before in your life.
Ooh, that's weird.
Okay. Or imagine getting blackout drunk and beating your boss to death.
Ooh.
Okay. So
yeah, these are not funny.
They're not funny. Some don't have any casualties, if you will. Like there's, I mean, I guess you could argue there's a victim in every case, but yeah. There's a lot of interest. Well, I'll get to it. So, and I'm talking about blackout drunks, like blackouts while drinking, not passing out. These are two entirely different things. Okay. So this means you remember everything before the blackout, like your history, your skills, like if you're a pilot or whatever, like you still possess those skills. You just lose the ability to make short-term memories. So like for 3 minutes. So it just keeps resetting every 3 minutes and it's gone. It's kind of like a tape that's just rewriting itself. So the longer you're blacked out, the less time you actually remember because of that window. And that's just due to the impacts of the abundance of alcohol in your brain, so you don't remember everything. And I remember going through a training one time, and they said that the reason, like college kids, like in binge drinking, often, I mean, they die. There's, reports every year about death. And it's because people are actually drowning. So for every molecule of alcohol you have in your system, it's pulling 3 molecules of water from your system, and it goes straight to the brain. So that's why you're so dehydrated when you drink a lot, but it's going all to the brain. So you've got all this extra water pressure and you're literally drowning, and that's what's causing that. So that's part of the same impact where your brain is just, and this part where it goes is impacting memory. So you just don't know, but you're fully competent in what you're doing. So it's really wild. What did I say on this? I don't even know what my notes mean sometimes. Like, it looked good in the moment, so I'm just going to skip that part. But the part of the brain that creates memories becomes so impaired that it just doesn't function.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's nothing physically wrong with it. It's just kind of
cut
turned off for that moment.
Yeah.
So the number one, this is a story. It was written by Dr. Timon Cermak in Psychology Today. It was a really interesting article because then they go into some of the science behind what happened and how this possibly could have happened. So the article refers to the doctor in question as Dr. X. This man had been a surgeon for 15 years. And while doing rounds one morning, he sees one of his patients recuperating from surgery, which was strange because only yesterday the patient had called him complaining of abdominal pain and was told by Dr. X to go to the ER if the pain worsened. But here he was, his patient, recovering from an appendectomy the night before. And so he was angry, like, no one consulted me. What the heck happened? And he wanted to understandably chew out the people that allowed this to happen. So he grabs the patient's chart and he sees that he is the one who performed the surgery last night. Zero memory of that experience at all. So he'd had wine with dinner the night before. He could remember that. Could not remember anything else about the evening. So he spoke to the patient very professionally, trying to deduce what happened the night before under the guise of testing the patient's ability to recall memory from the day before as part of like a routine post-exam or post-op procedure. The patient recounts the events. The doctor hid his confusion, plays along. And so then the doctor goes to speak with the nurse who assisted him with the surgery, asking her if she noticed anything unusual about his behavior the night before. He hadn't been as chatty as normal and perhaps a little slower than normal, but all else was totally normal.
Wow.
And so he was able to piece together and you know, bless him for actually trying to solve it and not just hide it, right? That the patient had returned to the ER. The hospital had called him to come perform the surgery. And he showed up, did what needed to be done. But I can attest that doing things for significant blocks of time and having absolutely no recollection of it is completely terrifying.
Yeah.
And so this all worked out okay for both the doctor and the patient was never any wiser to their circumstances under which the surgery is performed. It was successful.
So in the article where this person's story was shared, was there an indication of was he a regular drinker? Did maybe the wine he had during dinner just push him over too far?
Nothing on that I remember reading.
That's kind of frightening, but okay.
But you know,
I think it speaks a little bit to muscle memory, right?
Other things going
He's
on.
He's probably
too.
done 1,000 appendectomies, and he does kind of just know what to do.
Well, it's that unconscious competence.
Yeah.
But then the other thing too is you just never know. I had alluded to being suspected having been roofied a couple of years ago. So it had been a really hard winter, and it was March. It was a beautiful March day, and I just wanted to be outside so much. So we're sitting on the patio out at a local restaurant downtown and invited some friends over. So we're out on the patio drinking happy hour margaritas. This is why I don't drink tequila. And but, they're weak. I mean, happy hour, they want to keep you going, right? So we're out there. We have a couple. Dinner comes, dinner goes. I really didn't eat much because we just kept talking. We hadn't seen each other for a while, so we just keep talking. And then they leave. So dinner's over. Our friends leave. I go to the bathroom for the first time this whole 3 hours we were sitting there. And I get into the stall and it was like a tidal wave in my brain, and I got so dizzy. And in this particular restaurant, there's 2 stalls. There's the ADA stall, and then there's a regular bathroom stall that is so – I'm not a big person.
No.
It is really hard to get in and out
maneuver.
of. You have to almost straddle the toilet to get in there to even close the door, right? So I'm in this one, And all of a sudden, I can't move my legs.
Oh my gosh.
I don't have my phone. I don't have anything with me. And I'm like, I've been on a cruise ship before during a hurricane, and I'm I don't know what's going. I'm seasick. I can't. I finally maneuvered. It was very painful and hard to get. And I'm seeing like things are moving constantly. So I didn't know like where the wall was. It was really hard. I am literally pulling myself through the restaurant on the booths like a sideways ladder because I cannot walk on my own accord. My legs, I can barely feel them.
And are you telling yourself like, look normal?
No, I'm trying because, a lot of people know me, but I was terrified because this experience I've never had.
Yeah.
And if you understand my raging alcohol issues and being blackout drunk and all that, I've never experienced anything like this. Mm-hmm. So I get out to the patio. I look at my husband. Again, my friends were gone. I don't know where my wallet is or my phone or anything. Fortunately, he had them. But I just looked at him and I said, I'm in trouble. And he said, okay. And he can see I can barely stand up. He gets me. We go around the back to the parking ramp. I'm throwing up by the time we get to the car. Now, backing up maybe an hour, the last margarita that came was like the fancy margarita with the shot in the middle. I can't remember what it is.
I have no idea.
It's like the Cadillac of margaritas that I never drink. First and only time, also never finished it. But there was something like floating on a piece of ice that looked it was just really suspicious. Like almost like the skin of a capsule or something and I remember, and I was already, lit, feeling good. It was outside the first spring day, blah, blah, blah. And I remember like taking my fingernail and I was getting ready to move it. And Janet's like, oh, don't worry about it. I have one on mine too. And then we got distracted and I didn't think anything else of it. So I don't know if that was residual for something that got put into my drink. I have no idea. But by the time we get to the car, I'm throwing up. My husband's trying to get me in, and it's an SUV, he's like, can you at least put a foot in the car? I said, I can't move my legs. So he picks my legs up. He puts them in the car. It was a rough ride home. And then we had we were the keynote speakers at a fundraising event for first responders in another state. And so we have to get in the car the next morning and make a very long drive. And so I literally have a box of Ziplocs with me.
Oh.
And Tim is driving, and I'm like, zip for hours. I made it. I rallied. I was able to do what we needed to do. Mm-hmm. They raised more money than they ever had, so it was really good. But it was just a terrible experience. So months later, I'm talking to somebody who was talking about being roofied, and they said the first thing they noticed is they couldn't move their legs.
Oh, that's weird.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And remember, I did not drink that whole drink.
Yeah.
So perhaps that minimized the effects, or perhaps it was I didn't have enough food in my system, or perhaps who knows?
You can't say for sure, but it just was not right.
So thinking back to that doctor, it could have just been a weird series of things that aligned to make that what he did have at dinner impact him in a way that just was abnormal.
Yeah.
It very well could have been. So the answer is no one knows. And he may not have any idea.
Oh.
So, okay, number 2, being blackout drunk in a foreign country arguably would be more terrifying than anything I've experienced. So this is Kathy Veronica's story, and this was printed in the UK edition of The Sun. So this gal was 18-year-old from Ireland when she got drunk for the first time, and she'd had episodes of waking up in a hospital with no memory of how she got there.
Ooh.
Yeah. So she writes about, and you see that on movies and stuff, like people wake up and like, where am I?
Yeah.
This actually happened to her. This is real life. So she writes about the loving the feeling of being like the life of the party, able to do anything, uninhibited. So when she was in college, the drinking escalated to the point where she starts missing classes because she's dealing with hangovers. Also have been there. She was a binge drinker she just didn't know her limits. She had always closed down the party or a bar, just couldn't stop until she passed out. But the first time she blacked out, she'd actually been kicked out of a bar because she was too drunk. Somehow she made her way home, no memory of it, and her friends could not figure out where she had gone. They were worried trying to find her.
Yeah.
So, but blacking out became just kind of a thing. This is just what you do. So that was kind of her way of life. So now she's in Italy for an internship. So an Irish girl in Italy. She went to a pub crawl one night with some random people she'd met because, I'm sure she's trying to like socialize and live it up, especially with as much as she enjoyed that. And she wakes up in a hospital. So evidently some strangers had found her passed out in the street and called an ambulance. So that's, for me, I'm not victim blaming or judging, but for me, I think if I'd wound up in the hospital, I maybe would have assessed some lifestyle changes or considered some lifestyle changes. Yeah. For me, I should have been hospitalized when I got alcohol poisoning so terribly. And that did it 10 years, no alcohol. And I've never experienced anything like that since, right? So then she moves to Paris for another internship and kind of tried to keep her drinking in check. So she was trying to make some changes, but she started spiraling again. She was alone in a strange city. And I can relate to this too. I am fearless, or at least back in the day, I was fearless when I was drinking. All the things I couldn't do when I was sober, I could do them when I was drinking. And so I can relate to that wanting to be the life of the party and that attention and all of that stuff. So I really empathize with this woman.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I think a lot of people, that's why they drink too much or they use a drug that maybe they normally wouldn't use in those social settings. Because a lot of people have social anxieties that are eased with the help of other substances. And so it's not strange or, super uncommon for people to do this. It's just unfortunate when you take it way too far.
Right. So this is still in Paris. She starts drinking, blah, 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 leads to her waking up in a doorway under a blanket with no memory of how she got there. But her tights and underwear were around her ankles. So she had a pretty good idea probably what happened. So she went to the police. They had CCTV footage showing a man raping her.
Oh, no.
She smartly went for a sexual health checkup and took care of things that needed to be taken care of physically. After a week, they found the perpetrator. He was a homeless heroin addict who had a record for molesting children.
Oh.
And when you think about that, like, especially Blackout drunk, if she really had lacked the evidence and hadn't gotten tested and checked out, so many people out there who are addicts aren't taking care of their sexual health or their physical health. And,
right.
And those things are contagious and transmittable.
Well, and the silver lining being, obviously, she didn't remember the actual incident. So there's that, but I'm sure it came with then other trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
also the shame.
This happened,
that's one of the things she talked about in the article was the shame.
Sure.
Of putting herself in that situation. Yeah. Also can relate. And being assaulted. Like, it drove her for a while to try to numb the pain even more.
Oh.
So, you just never know how trauma is going to send you, right?
Right.
The same traumatic event can happen to two different people or even the same person. And based on just circumstances of where your brain is and its ultradian rhythm and like all these different things, it impacts how you interpret and code that event in your brain, and therefore the residual trauma and the residual emotion that is tied to that. So she spiraled down. Every night she would drink until she blacked out, eventually ending up in the hospital again. And so this time she really knew she needed help. She couldn't do this on her own. So she wasn't at the point of being an alcoholic, according to her. So she was able to actually kick the booze, which what a blessing, because we see addiction just eat people up every day, right?
We do, yep.
And she understood that it was more of the mental health that needed addressing. So she did start going down that journey to get the help and healing that she needed.
Yeah. I met one other person in my TV days who I interviewed. He had actually killed a man drinking and driving.
Oh, my gosh.
And I asked him, what did you do? Because he said that was the last day he ever drank. And this, when I'm interviewing him, was several years later, 7 years maybe, somewhere along those lines. And he said, because I said, what, did you do a program or something to help you stop drinking? And he said, no, because I wasn't an alcoholic. I was an alcohol abuser.
Okay. Yeah.
When I drank, I always drank too much, but I don't crave alcohol the way, a lot of alcoholics maybe do. And so that was really interesting. That was just a lesson for me that there really is a difference. And I don't know. I think a lot of kids in college, of course, binge drink, and 10 years later, they're not alcoholics, you know, but there are people who that's exactly where it starts. So I think just to not risk letting it get away from you, you know, you should try to keep it in check all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting interview.
You know, with my kids, I have 2 adult children now. I did talk to them about what is going on with the brain, with alcohol, all this stuff. And they're both very responsible, social people. You know, I know they've both been drunk. They've both had hangovers, but nothing to the extreme. And it's in moderation in most cases. My son's very good and measured about it.
Yeah.
And my daughter just doesn't really do it a lot. So they're both very aware of the negative consequences, and so try to do it responsibly.
Can you see my eye twitching?
Yes. I can.
It's
Is it
really
me?
bad.
Is it me?
No, it's probably too much
Is it caffeine?
I've been on a kick. I'm sorry.
We need your like alter ego. So we need a name for her when she comes out and the eye's going. Yeah.
Because I asked somebody the other day, surely you see my eye twitching? And they're like, no. But
in the
so
past, you've asked me
now.
today. It's kind of wild. Yeah.
It's really
It's
bad.
like all over the place. It's like her eyelids having a party.
I feel like my whole head's twitching a little bit. Okay, story number 3.
Number 3.
Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, this is okay. April 2013, 32-year-old Eugenio Salgado was charged with beating his 56-year-old boss to death. And he was found right next to his boss's body, passed out, drunk, face down with his arm over his former employer. So the coroner determined that the victim died from 17 to 21 blunt wounds to the head after allegedly getting his head slammed into a sidewalk repeatedly. Could you imagine?
No.
Oh, I know. I'm getting a headache just thinking about it. His defense claims that Eugenio wasn't fully responsible because he was blackout drunk. You still did it. You're still responsible.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry you don't remember it, but you're responsible. They bring in a psychiatrist who claims that the blackout state, people still retain the ability to make decisions, but they lack the ability to understand consequences. So the story, as best as can be pieced together, is that these two were enjoying happy hour. Boss brought up the name of one of Salgado's former supervisors that he assumed meant was going to be rejoining the company, and he lost it. He did not want to work for or with this person again, and that's all it took.
That's an extreme position.
It's an extreme position, but I can think of one person in my past who I will not name on the air. You know who I'm talking about. That
you would flip a lid. You still wouldn't beat somebody's head into a sidewalk.
Well, no.
But it would
It'd
make
be
you quit.
Really tempting with this guy because he was just so horrible. But anyway, so Eugenio was sentenced to 15 years in state prison and still maintains he doesn't know or remember what happened that night. But that's seriously the curse of blackouts. And can you imagine? You're sitting in prison and you're like, you cannot, like,
you don't remember committing the crime.
Yeah, you're just like, It's there's nothing there. I have nothing like to go, yeah, I deserve this, or I'm innocent, or whatever. There's no frame of reference. You're just now in prison. Like that would be a wild experience. Not that like he should be punished for what he did. Yeah. But yeah. Okay.
I'd argue the choices leading up to the choices you don't remember make you responsible.
Yeah. Maybe not getting help if he was really traumatized and abused by this former supervisor. Sure. And, you know, I know, again, in my own personal experience, there's someone I dealt with for 4 years of my life that I probably should still talk to some professional help about, because I went to the post office one day, and this was during COVID, so everybody's masked up. And I see a man, same build, same frame, side profile the same, and I had a like deer, and I'm like, oh my God, how do I get out of here without causing a scene? And I really wanted to run away, but then I heard his voice, and I'm like, oh God, it's not him, thank God.
Yeah,
you know, and it's not a physical thing; it's a psychological thing. Yep. This, you know, man never hurt me physically.
Right.
It's just he was so flipping miserable to be around, just completely psychotic. Not a clinical diagnosis, my loving term to describe this bastard. So
He might have a clinical diagnosis. You don't actually know.
Oh, I'm pretty sure if psychiatrists got a hold of him, they'd have a heyday. He'd be like all the things. So, okay.
Story number 4.
Partying. This is me. So this is what happened this night. I mean, we've talked about it before, how with my low level of self-confidence, this was my liquid courage. So for me to get up the guts to like approach or cue a guy I was interested in, this is really what led to the alcohol abuse, as you mentioned earlier. So there was a certain guy that I was interested in, and I remember getting, I don't know how I always had access to alcohol because I clearly couldn't go buy it, but I had a 750 of Jack Daniels, which is a lot for, a girl who weighs, 110 pounds or whatever. I remember finishing the bottle. I remember dropping it.
Whoa.
So I do have memories up to this point. And we're in a house, a band is playing, and he's in the band, of course, because this was my type. And then, so the empty bottle, there's just like a little bit of amber fluid right in the corner of the bottle. And so I'm watching it, very amused by how it's rolling, even though it's a square bottle. Dunk, 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 dunk. And it hits the guy in the foot. I think he was a bass player or something. And then I don't remember anything else. So I wake up the next day into the afternoon, not feeling great. My bed is wet. So I either vomited alcohol or pissed the bed. I don't know which.
Yeah.
Only time that's happened that I'm aware of. I was still dressed from the night before. Raging hangover. I mean, someone was trying to, pull my brain apart. So the next night I go out with a friend to a friend's house, her friend's house. I don't know these people. I'm not drinking at all. And so I start talking to some guy I'd never met before. And he's like, he knows way too much about me.
Ooh.
And I'm like, confused beyond belief. And finally he starts catching on that I don't know what he's talking about. I know what he's talking about, but I don't know him.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we talked for like 2 hours or something last night. And I'm like, oh my God, what else do we do? Because I'm not attracted to this guy at all, like terrified. What? Like, I have no idea. And I just said, I've never seen you before in my life. And now he's looking at me like, what the? Yeah, it was really rough. So it all became clear. But I guess we sat outside with another bottle.
Oh, geez.
Talked for hours. And I do remember when I finally took my boots off, I had these sweet pair, because I told you I used to hang out with the biker gang. So I had these sweet pair of leather biker boots. They were the bomb. This is the night they went to the landfill because I vomited down the inside of my boots. I don't know how I got home. I have no idea how I got home. Who transported me? None of my friends knew what was going. Like, I have no idea.
Oh my gosh.
No idea.
Well, you are lucky. Nothing
I made
else
it home. I somehow made
happened.
it into my house without my parents. And the only thing I know how my parents figured it out is I passed out for a long time. So it was many hours into the following afternoon. And my mom came down to my room and she's just giving me the death look, and my bed's wet, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So it was bad. So somehow.
So if that had happened in 2024, would you be looking at the guy like, please tell me I didn't give you all my logins and passwords for all the important things? Imagine how much you could give away and not remember it.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is you still, like in the case of the doctor, you're still unconsciously
highly functioning.
Confident. You just don't remember it. So
that freaks me out.
It's terrifying. So nope. Well, here. So for me, I was somehow able to function. I was still coherent, which made it hard for my friends to understand that I was in a blackout state.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. Because passed out drunk, I mean, you clearly aren't going to miss those cues, right? But in that blackout state, it's really hard to tell sometimes. So in my research on this, I learned that there are 2 types of blackouts. There's fragmentary and en bloc. The former is when you do remember bits and pieces. And usually I think I remember reading that that's going to be when you're not in that blackout state for as long. You can remember little more frequent bits and pieces. The latter is when the memory as a whole is impacted by alcohol. And I have multiple cases of both types of these. I didn't know there was a distinction. But so what's really scary is that, like in Kathy's case, we don't have CCTV here in the United States. So, I mean, some cities do, but not en masse, right? So if something happens and you become aware of it, it's super difficult to find proof and hold people accountable. And I wish I could say to listeners to watch yourselves and never let it go that far, but I also understand being emotionally fragile or having some kind of compromised decision-making abilities and putting yourself in these risky positions.
Well, it still doesn't take away from the fact that, I mean, even if you are vulnerable, there are laws that prevent other people from taking advantage of the vulnerable person. Like, that doesn't take away somebody else's culpability because you are in a bad state,
right.
So
I mean, there's lots of cases on like college campuses where girls are not blackout drunk, but almost
impaired,
passed out drunk, right?
Yes.
Well, she said yes, or she didn't say no. Not saying no doesn't mean exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and I think if we can just drill that into young people over and over and over again, it needs to be made so clear. From parents, from teachers, from college officials, because you do think you're invincible, right? When you're young and whatever. And I actually didn't drink until I was 21. I had just a very different college experience. And I also didn't really like alcohol very much until I was well into adulthood. And so that was part of it. I'd just be like, I couldn't drink that much because I never had access to alcohol that I actually liked. So I shouldn't say access to, but, it is kind of like when I remember at a friend's wedding, her mom splurged for some really good champagne ahead of the rehearsal.
Oh, okay.
Or a luncheon like the day before. And I was like, this is amazing. But it was good stuff. And I never really had good stuff before. So it just made a difference. So I just wasn't in a position where I was drinking very often or liked it very much when I did. But even when I did, I also had a ridiculously high metabolism in college because I was swimming all the time. And so you hit a point in the swim season, even if you were 21, you were not allowed to drink. And I followed that rule, as did my teammates. We took it very seriously, or as far as I know, my teammates did. But because my metabolism was going, I could drink probably more than the same person my size and not even feel some of the effects. I wouldn't have driven someplace, but as far as being drunk goes, I can really only remember a couple of times where I was even on the verge of it as a young 20-something because I just didn't. And some of it was just not loving the taste that much, Now there are beers and wines that I'm like, ooh, I like that. I'm still not going to drink too much because now I'm an adult and I have responsibilities. But, when you're in college and you don't, a Friday night and you don't have to worry about stuff till Monday morning, it's different. So
there's still some drinks that they
can't do
good, but I could never drink. Like just the trigger of like right now, even my stomach is souring just thinking about a couple of these things.
I had one shot on my 21st birthday, and that was the last one that night because it was disgusting.
Smart.
And I always say that one put me over the edge. I knew I was done, and I was done. And, young, dumb, you do dumb stuff, but you're still here to tell the tale. So you, again, escaping
barely
your 21-year-old self and younger.
Well, this one, I guess I didn't contextualize that with an age. So I was probably a junior in high school when that story happened. So, and one of my problems was all my friends were always older than me.
Yeah, that does make a difference.
It does make a difference. So, yeah.
Interesting.
All the wrong decisions. I should have been hanging out with people my age and, probably would have been safer in some cases, but...
And you asked, like, I wonder how I had access to stuff. I think we had the same bottle of, I don't know if it was whiskey or bourbon in my home. Well, the only time my parents drank it was like
I can't even smell that
to
stuff
throw
now.
like a splash in eggnog at Christmas time. So literally the same bottle
Lasted
was in the
forever,
same
yeah.
place for years.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. Who knows? Might still be there. Because I don't even think they do that anymore. But that's the only not that was the only
Well,
time
if
they
we
ever had
recorded
anything.
yesterday, I could have asked your mom and dad that.
I know, right? They would have. Oh, my mom would tell you.
Like, what
she's
are
never
you
been drunk in her
talking
life,
about?
and she has no regrets. She's just like, I think her mom was friends or related to somebody, a woman who had a drinking problem and was very sick because of it, probably had cirrhosis, I would guess. I don't remember exactly. But when my mom was like 13, they went to visit this woman. And my grandmother apparently told her, like, FYI, although this would have been like in the 50s, so she wouldn't have used the words FYI. But she said, or early 60s, she said, this is what happens when you drink too much. Like, just be aware. And my mom was young and it stuck, and she just didn't. Yeah, she didn't.
I mean,
have
when
a
you
lot
really
and same
know,
thing. I don't
like,
think she really
what happens
likes
to your
it.
liver, what happens to your brain, what happens to just it is different. And instead of, because the subconscious mind cannot process a negative, right? So when you're saying don't do this, don't do that, you have to focus on the this or that in order to even think about it, which means, oh, that's what my now subconscious mind is focusing on, which then I think they did a study on that's why the whole DARE program actually led to increase in drug use amongst children.
It was don't do.
Yeah. So completely
just say no.
Backfired. Yeah. So it's that same kind of a concept. Now I love my liver. I love my brain. I'm kind to my body and my organs. And, I just very rarely even, I don't even enjoy really a buzz. Like I just don't. I'll enjoy the, taste of certain alcohol, but I'm not gonna just go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. Again, glad you escaped that version of yourself.
Yeah,
we'll
me
take
too.
a quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about what we want to escape to in the coming days. We'll be right back. At One Heart, transforming lives begins with safe, stable housing and a support system that allows people to reach their true potential. It requires motivation, mentorship, and a myriad of services. It takes time and treasure, but it's worth it because it's working. One Heart provides people with a sense of security, opportunities for economic advancement, and adds dozens to the workforce each year. Learn more about why One Heart works at oneheartrc.org. Welcome back to the
to help support the nonprofit One Heart that we work for and believe in. And so the best thing you can do to help us if you're into that is review. I mean, you don't have to be a patron and contribute, but even just a positive review will help people find us.
Rate, review, and share.
Yeah.
So if you have friends, family members who you know are looking for a new fun podcast with a little different take on the true crime genre, this might be for them. So please share with them. We'd really appreciate it.
And I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I know. I've lost track of states. There's quite a few states.
Very cool.
Yeah, so
excellent.
might be 20-ish states without sitting here and counting them all, but that's...
I love it.
Yeah.
Keep them coming,
keep it
people.
coming. Share it. Spread the word. If an episode gave you, helped you like Julie today, learned something that you didn't know that someone can benefit from, or made you laugh like the poop episode or whatever we get. I think that one actually still has the most downloads. It's hilarious. But that really was a funny one. And, it just all really goes to help. Yep, that is the number one. I just pulled it up. That's so funny. Not So Smooth Criminals coming in at number 2.
Also very funny.
Also very funny. So clearly people are liking the humor of what people in crisis brain are capable of.
Or people just love Chad, our guest on both of those shows.
Okay, so we need to try a funny one without him and see. Oh, and then also
I was going to say get him back.
We have a really cool episode that we're going to be recording next week that I'm pretty excited about. So I'm just going to give you that little teaser. It'll be kind of a history lesson, but a really powerful history lesson into historical trauma. And so we'll just leave you with that, and then you can tune in, and we'll have kind of a celebrity in the studio with us, too.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I am escaping to my younger self who learned to love musicals, musical theater. And I get to go tonight to one of our community theater shows.
Oh, which one?
And Fiddler on the Roof.
Nice.
It was literally first grade Julie, the first musical she ever saw on a stage. My brother was in high school at the time. He was not in the show, but he was in the orchestra pit. And I loved it. And everyone they did, he was in 2 others when he was in high school. And then I was in them when I was in high school. But I never had big parts because a lot of time I was doing like sports at the same time. So I could never have the big parts. But anyway, and so... it was the first one I kind of fell in love with.
Yeah.
So I get to go tonight, and I'm very
nostalgic.
excited.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm going all by my little lonesome.
Are you?
I didn't even bother to find somebody. I'm like, there's a seat in a decent spot. I'm just going to go.
Good for you.
Because I am not afraid of movies by myself, restaurants by myself. Sometimes that's what I want to do.
That's
just
awesome.
Be my own company.
I'm not that way. So like I will be, when I've had to travel and stuff for business and I'm sitting in a hotel restaurant or stuff all by myself. No, I just feel like I'm on guard. Somebody's going to come and try to take advantage or, impose themselves or whatever. And it's just really creepy.
I mean, do I do intentionally things by myself all the time? No.
Or maybe it's too many movies, right? Of where you've got the
and too
woman
much true crime
alone in the hotel lobby. Hey, but I'm going to tell you what. One of these days, it's going to probably save my bacon because there's all these lessons that come out of that, right? Of
I've never heard that saying before.
Empowering women to have a voice, speak up, not be small, not be polite. Obviously, we live in a culture, and it's starting to become less now, but that it's just like, it's not polite for a woman to say this or that or the other thing.
Yeah.
And, some predators can be pretty aggressive and creepy, and being able to point and call them out on it instead of just trying to, okay, I'm just going to be nice until they go away. Well, sometimes they don't go away.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you what. Not that I want it to happen, but one of these days, especially with my flipping track record, something's going to happen. And I'm going to go, that story on that podcast just saved my butt.
Saved her bacon.
Yeah.
Well, again,
Might save your bacon.
please check out our website at escapepod.live. Follow us on all our socials. Reach out at justbecause@escapepod.live or share your story of escape with us. For that, go to escapeartist@escapepod.live. Use that email address, please. We are closing the hatch.
I want to throw out one more thing real quick. Also, listeners, if you have any expertise in any of the topics that we talk about, because Julie and I are not experts in those, we'd love to hear, hey, this is also valuable information, or hey, this wasn't quite correct. We're happy to be able to make sure that our listeners